Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. I've returned from the Oceania International Championships, and today we're going to look over the top 8 deck lists and discuss why they were so successful, what I like about them, what I think might have to change about them as we do move into the more developed meta. The real story of the International Championships was Ultra Malamar was a very, very popular deck in day one. Zapdos was seen mainly in Shrine builds, not mostly Jolteon builds, which was also surprising for me. Pikachu and Zekrom definitely showed up to the event. Zoroark was an incredibly underplayed archetype. Probably, I would say, like the 5th or 6th most popular deck, which is so unheard of for Zoroark decks. So it was really surprising to see that. And in general, there was just a lot of Zapdos, lots of Pikarom, lots of Ultra Malamar, a decent amount of Lost March, a decent amount of Persimmon, decent amount of Celebi and Venusaur, kind of like handfuls of each. But it was kind of remarkable to see how few Zoroarks actually were played in the tournament. So take that with a pinch of salt as you do look at these results. We'll be looking through 7 deck lists today. 6 of them will be... seven of them will be from the top 8. One of them we actually don't have information for, which is Lucas Enrique's Pikachu and Zekrom list, number 6 down here. But I will be showing a deck list from that event, which made 2 top 16 places and 2 top 36 places anyway. Or top 32 places anyway. So it's another like powerful Pikarom list, which I think is worth looking at. So first of all, we'll start with the winners list. Isaiah Williams and Daniel Altavia both played this in top 8. Danny was knocked out by Isaiah in top 8, and Isaiah was eventually able to become the winner of the tournament with this Jirachi Zapdos Shrine-based build. A very, very simplistic list, which is literally just trying to get the most use out of Jirachi as possible by having 3 copies of Switch, 3 copies of Escape Rope, which is additional switching effects, whilst also being a fantastic card against Malamar players, because you really don't want to be attacking into Giratinas ever. So having 4 Guzma, 3 Escape Rope means you're pretty much gusting that all the time. Trying to pick off their lower hit point things in the back is always going to be the priority here. And it also protects you against, Jolteon GX's Swift Run GX attack. Also against the Dawn Wings Necrozma GX attack. You have so many outs to get around this and still damage whatever you like. So the 3 Escape Rope I think was really huge. Something we hadn't ever seen really from the Japanese list. No one was really playing more than 1 or 2 copies. So playing so many switching cards was the big revelation for this archetype, really. Just having so much movement in here means that you can spam Jirachi over and over and over again. I think the only other like really notable things is that they did also play an Instructor Rangaroo for additional draw power. This protects you a little bit against Marshadow, most notably in the early turns, which is definitely worth noting. I'm giving you some extra supplementary draws when you're up against opposing Absol players and you can't spam Jirachi as much as you would like. So that's definitely worth noting. I think the supporter line is also very interesting. 3 Professor Kukui and 0 Volkner. Definitely different from many other lists we've seen, as they are just pure on Zapdos. I think having this extra damage buff makes sense to help you reach some key numbers. So I do like the addition of Professor Kukui into their list. It's surprising for me to see no Volkner at all, but I think overall it's not too shabby. The final card is Energy Lotto. I really hated this card from their list. I think it's very close to being an awesome, like, perfect 60. For me, the Lotto doesn't really make sense. Yes, it gives you extra usage, like sort of searchability via Stellar Wish, but the Energy Lotto isn't guaranteed anyway. If it was an Energy Search, like just guaranteed, I wouldn't mind it at all. But the fact that it's not guaranteed, I think I would prefer just to have a second Ultra Ball or a 9th Energy card in general, or just 1 Volkner. I think the Energy Lotto is the weak card in their deck. I think everything else is very strong. Looking forwards to the future, I think this deck obviously has no answer to Muck. They really did get away with something here in this tournament by just having no answers to Muck at all. They weren't playing the Wobbuffet to shut down Ditto. They weren't playing any Zeb Striker to deal with Muck at all. So they pretty much dodged a bullet. The fact that Zoroark was very, very underplayed really benefited this list a lot. And I think going forward, either the Wobbuffet include from Lost Thunder, let me get it up here, the Shady Tail Wobbuffet or the Zeb Striker, I think might need to be incorporated into this list to improve your matchups against Muck, because there is likely going to be a more, more impetus on Muck, seeing so this deck just gets hard answered by it pretty much. I think the only other thing that I would be debating is something along the lines of either Raikou or Jolteon GX in your own build into the list to improve mirror matches, because there's really not much you can do in mirror, because you're both just so easily taking one prize against each other. We even saw Isaiah in a mirror match against Carl Peters in day 2. Isaiah elected to go second so that he could get the first, or attempt to get the first Thunderous Assault off, and outside of choosing to go second in a mirror match, I don't know how you can improve the matchup too much in terms of tech cards. So I think these are things that we will have to explore, because mirrors are going to be everywhere, and there's really not too much we can do if both players are using Absol anyway to try and trap or do anything like that, because there's just so much switching in the format. But in the deck list, that you're never really going to strand stuff or slow stuff down. I think we need some lightning techs that are pretty chunky to try and help in mirror match situations, but really that's about it. Very streamlined, straightforward list that ended up doing very, very well. Like I said, a win for Isaiah and a top 8 placement for Daniel Altavia, who was chasing down his back-to-back Internats win, which would have been nuts. Speaking of two-time international champion, Stefan Ivanoff got to the finals, almost being the second person in history to get 2 Internats under his belt. Only Tord has achieved this feat so far. And he was playing another very interesting list of Zoroark, Lycanroc, adding in a 2-2 line of Lucario GX, giving you many better answers to Pikachu and Zekrom. His entire list was pretty much meant to be a Pikachu and Zekrom Punisher. Definitely did pay dividends throughout the weekend, because there was lots of Pikachu and Zekrom. Also, you have a reasonable mirror match with just more fighting support in the deck anyway. I think his sort of soft answer to Zapdos did really show that it wasn't enough of an answer against Zapdos by having Absol instead of an Alolan Grimer. Absol gives you some slight additional utility against Malamar builds that are trying to use a skateboard, but it's just not quite as good as Grimer as it would be in the Zapdos matchup. So I'm pretty sure everyone will be adding in Grimer to this list, and I think the first cut is Absol. The potential other cut is Field Blower, but I don't really think Field Blower is the best of cuts, because many Pika-Roms may be trying to add in Weakness Policy, because otherwise they just can't compete against this deck. So Blower seems reasonable. I initially hated Blower when I first saw it, and then I was like, yeah, I mean, Pika-Rom can only really beat this deck if it has Weakness Policy, so I guess that's allowed as a one-off. I think because he has Mallow, I'll let him get away with it. That's just about it. In terms of other counts, there's not too much craziness going on. I think the 2 Viridian Forest is pretty cute. Initially, again, sort of scratching my head that you don't have Devoured Field or Kukui in this list. So there are some key numbers that you just whiff on hitting sometimes. But the Viridian Forest, again, is just all about Pika-Rom pressure. If you can handle Pika-Rom, you're going to do well at the tournament, was pretty much what Stefan went for. And having additional outs just to find your energy cards early is really impressive, and it also makes your Lilies much better. He does play 4 copies of them, so it has some additional synergy with Lily in there as well. The only downside really is there's a lot of people playing Viridian, and there's a lot of decks that could take advantage of it. If you put it in play against a Malamar or a Pika-Rom or even Zapdos, because they have Coco Prism Star as well, it can be beneficial for them, and it can just guarantee them energy cards to keep pressure on you. So there's a small downside to playing Viridian Forest. I can definitely see this changing, going to some other former stadium, but having 3 total stadiums is very helpful against Shrine, so I can see like maybe 1 Forest remaining in the list, but there is some downside to it. Wondrous Labyrinth was a stadium card, which was very interesting to see in action in a Zoroark deck, especially because Zoroark known for just attaching a DC and smacking. Initially, Stefan put this in here for Lost March, as it was a very hyped archetype going into the tournament. Lost March did very poorly at the event. I think 1 or 2 made top 64, but that's about it. Pretty much the wave of Ultra Necrozma destroyed Lost March and put it down to the bottom tables. But Wondrous Labyrinth was a soft answer again to Lost March. Not many of them played stadiums. If they did play stadiums, it was really like 1 or 2 copies of either Shrine or Sky Pillar. So with 3 copies of stadiums, you can normally get around it at some point in the game, and it means that you have a much stronger Lost March. We also saw Stefan try and use this against other Zapdos players, also Pikachu and Zekrom players. So it is got some versatility to it. And I can see it maybe staying in the list. You have to play very cleverly with this card. Sometimes you need to have your game plan very far set up in terms of your own energy attachments. Otherwise, this can be just as detrimental to you as it is to your opponent sometimes. In terms of support accounts, I think it's a little cheeky to only play one copy of Cynthia. But that's really the only thing I would question. Again, no Professor Kukui is a little bit awkward. I'd like to see one come into the list. That's really about it. He's playing no copies of Countergain or Multi-Switch. I think one of them could be reasonable, because sometimes Lucario gets its Aura Strike off, and then it's just sat there for the rest of the game. People gust around it like once, and then, or even if they don't gust around it and just don't attack you, then it's just sat there on your board. We don't have Rainbow Energy for Ace of Rhoda, for example. So having multi-switch in the deck means that you could go into a Cyclone kick against Zoroark players or against Pikarom players if they're just going to try and avoid your Lucario altogether, because he immediately stops becoming a threat as soon as you've used Aura Strike, pretty much. So people just get around him so easily, especially with the amount of escape ropes and Guzmas in the format right now. People just don't attack into Cantankerous Beatdown like ever. It's not possible for them to do it, basically. So having a multi-switch in here would be pretty cool to get into Cyclone Kick or vice versa. It's the same idea Stefan has of just having multiple threats on the board. If you get extra attachments, the multi-switch lets you into the game a lot more. And I think with Zoroark mirror matches being more prevalent, I could definitely foresee multi-switch coming back into the list in some regard. But yeah, really, really solid list. I think he'll be kicking himself that he wasn't playing a low-end Grimer. But at the same time, Zapdos was maybe the 5th or 6th most hyped deck going into the tournament. I didn't think it was that hyped at all, and it really did come in droves in the end. So I don't blame Stefan for going for Absol instead of just a low-end Grimer, but I think going forward, Grimer is easily the play. Then we see Kaione playing Pikachu and Zekrom. Very interesting list, actually. I'm not a huge fan of this list. There's a lot going on. It feels like he's halfway house in a lot of regards. He's only playing 2 Jirachi, but then it takes up the space of 2 board, 2 switch, 2 rope. He's playing 1/1 Jolteon GX. I think Jolteon is a stellar card, and I think it was useful for him, actually, throughout the tournament when I saw him playing a few games with his build. His is really I guess this is the most Thunder Buddies-esque Pikarom you'll be seeing. It's not all in on Pikachu and Zekrom the whole time. It's got Stretcher and double Zapdos, so it can play the role of Zapdos if it needs to. I do like that he's playing Shady Tail Wob. I think this is a card that might be going into Isaiah and Danny's lists to shut down Ditto, because then they only have the one Grimer threat. So if you can get Wobbuffet and Guzma on the same turn, you can just knock out the Grimer, and then they can't do much unless they're playing Nanu. So I think the Wob might be introduced, so I do like that Kaione was sort of on the ball with that tech card at least. But I think overall, when you only have 2 Jirachis, it's not super consistent, and he's only playing 2 Energy Switch. I know that a lot of the other successful lists that we'll see later on with Jirachi only played 2 E-Switch, but they played 4 Jirachi, so it's really different. And with only 2 copies, I think it's a little slow off the mark to get the Pikarom out. I think, yeah, like I said, it's just kind of halfway house, really. It feels like he's trying to have the versatility to take on lots of different forms in different matchups, which is no bad thing at all. But I think there are some glaring cards that you would definitely want in here. Tapu Lele GX being one of them. His support account just has the 1 Volkner without Lele. It just becomes very random that it pops up. Only 10 Lightning Energy cards doesn't really support the Pikachu and Zekrom quite enough, in my opinion. So I think he's tried to mix and match, and obviously it got him very far in the tournament. But I prefer my Pikaroms being more streamlined, because there's such a downside to putting a 3 prize Pokemon on the board, especially one like this that only has 240 hit points and is weak to fighting. Everyone's trying to capitalize on Pikachu and Zekrom decks in general. Why would you go sort of halfway about it? You just set your stall out and say, okay, here he is, try and deal with him on a 1-turn clock. Kaiwen's list is kind of sometimes you'll get it early, sometimes you won't. So I don't know, it feels kind of weird to me. I think we'll be seeing more streamlined Pikaroms take over the format than this sort of versatile lightning box deck that I guess this is more akin to. Speaking of Turbo Pikarom, that's what Jose Morero's list was all about. So much so that he played a Rayquaza GX just to Stormy Winds and get an extra energy into play at times. That does complement his 4 energy switch, 2 multi-switch, which was absurd to see. I think 2 wasn't enough in Kaione's list, but 6 is definitely a lot in Jose's list. I think if there's ever spaces that you want to cut into, cut those multi-switches down. I think 4 copies is enough. Obviously, Jose is not playing any Jirachi in his build, so he is just Acrobike focused. I'm a big fan of the Acrobike focus personally. I think, again, it might be one that we have to look forward to in the future because there's going to be more muck in decks just in general, and Absol's already super prevalent, so I like the fact that he was going down the bike build. It's the one I was testing the most with Pika on myself. He also has the backup Oranguru to instruct a few cards. Double Let Loose is a big factor of his build. I love Double Let Loose in his list. Trying to just go all out aggressive with the 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Acrobike, the Treasure as well. You can try and get lots of energy in the discard early, try and get your Dance of the Ancients early, and then just let loose them. I think, for me, the 2 multi-switch, cut those and just add in more Nest Balls, because all you really want to do is get Dance of the Ancients going early, and just having 1 or 2 more Nest Ball. It could even just be Nest Treasure that are the increased cards that you add, or just an extra supporter card. Because I like his turbo approach a lot. I just don't like the multi-switches. And I want to have more ball search for exactly Coco Prism Star, because it's even more important to get it on turn 1 now, or turn 2, to go down that route. And also you're just thinning your deck in general. You want to get Zero Aura down turn 1, you want to get Peak Rom down turn 1 as well, so I think Nest Ball is just always a very good card in this deck. The list I was testing played 3 copies of Nest Ball, for example, so I'd like to see that added into the list. I think the only other thing that's weird for me is Erica's Hospitality. His list especially is trying to go very fast on turn 1. Erica doesn't help that. And let loose the opponent on turn 2 so they don't set up. So in both regards, Erica doesn't synergize with his deck at all. You're trying to crumb people over with let loose, and you just want to be quick turn 1. So cut Erica for Lily or Volkner would be my shout, because it just seems to have complete anti-synergy with what he's tried to build. It's such a weird inclusion from him. Just doesn't make sense in my eyes. The Wondrous Labyrinth also features in this list, trying to slow other decks down. This can give you some defense against Zapdos players, can give you some defense against a few things here and there, make life more difficult for a Tapu Koko GX just to come down out of nowhere, Aero Trail, and knock you out from opposing builds. But overall, I think it's... it could just be a Viridian Forest, or it could be, again, just a Nest Ball or a faster card. A 4th Guzma as well as a card that I would really like in here, so play Wondrous Lab if you want to, but it doesn't really help the overall goal of the deck too much, other than just like early protection. But I think your protection is just let loose, pretty much. I think that's the best way to protect yourself from your opponent doing stuff. Just plan A, get full blitz very early, add in the let loose, hope that just carries the game. I think this will be a popular way to build the deck going forward. I think it's... I really liked Jose's list. I really like how bold he went with the 4 energy moving cards. It really did make a statement, and it was really fun to see his list overall. But I think some fine-tuning will keep this definitely relevant and strong. I think you do have to be concerned about both the Zapdos list and the Zoroark Riolu Lycanroc build. Sorry, the Lucario build. I think you can consider going towards weakness policy. I think if you want to play policy, you have to go down a Volkner route, play 2 copies of Volkner, 1 or 2 copies of weakness policy. That will eat up spaces, it will be awkward, but Zoroark is playing 1 or no Field Blower. Some people are finding the space for Grimer and a few other cards in Stefan's list by cutting Blower. And if you want to give yourself a better chance against Zoroark players, policy is not a bad shout, to be honest, so I can see it being weaved into the deck. But that was Jose's build. In at number 5, we had Bert Walters, my favourite build of the top 8. I think this is the strongest deck in the format right now, to be honest. I think as the format progresses towards Zoroark, this build is much better equipped at dealing with Zoroark, and I think it has no real very bad matchup right now in the format. I think even in Zapdos mirror matches, you have some high hit point Pokemon like Buzzwole that you can put down on your board just to make their escape ropes useless. So I think in Zapdos mirror matches, you're not even the worst at all. Giving yourself extra sprinting options is very cool. Having Sledgehammer turn and Nightcap turns, very strong against Zoroark and Malamar players and such, and Pikachu and Zekrom players, obviously. So I think this is a very versatile and strong list. Reminds me of Yoneda's Japanese top 4 list, I believe it was. And I think this is just very strong. I think the cards for me that are strange in Bert's list is 3 Ultra Balls. That's a lot of Ultra Balls. I think the thing we learned about Isaiah's build is having lots of switching cards is very good. So I'd like to cut a ball for a rope. I think that's literally the only card I want to change from this list, because otherwise I think it's very strong. The only other thing I would consider is thickening the Zebstrika line to a 2-2, just to be even more defensive against Zoro players, so that they can't just, muck and Bloodthirsty Eyes in the same turn, and then you're still in a terrible spot. The other include would be Wobbuffet again, trying to protect yourself from early muck. That's really about it. But yeah, Bert's list really awesome. Bert and Robin Schultz both played the same 60. Robin made top 16, Bert made top 8. He had some big whiffs in top 8 as well to not progress further through the tournament. He was honestly the player I had tipped to win. When I saw the top 8, I thought his list was very strong. And he was up against Stefan as well. So when I saw him up against Stefan, I thought he would have a very good chance of winning the matchup, because Stefan only plays the one Ditto. He doesn't play Grimer, and on top of that, Bert has Zebstrika and Buzzwole. But if you go back and look at the stream, Bert has some big whiffs and has some awkward prizes as well. So unfortunate that he wasn't able to go further in the tournament, to be honest. And I do love his deck list. I think it's really awesome. The one Volkner, it's kind of weird how Volkner's become like a 1 or 0 of in some of these Lightning decks after being like an initial 4 of in some of the Japanese lists. When you do have 4 Jirachis, it makes a little bit more sense, though, that you can play Volkner. I could see you going up to a second Volkner as well. There were a few occasions where Bert was whiffing energy cards, but he is playing 10 energy anyway, so I don't know, maybe not. For me, the 4 Ultra Balls the high count, for sure. I'd like to add in an extra rope. That's about it, though. The 3, instead of Isaiah only played 1 Ultra Ball, but it does make sense to play more in this build because you have the critical turns of Buzz and Nihilego, so I can definitely see it being higher than Isaiah's, but not necessarily 3 copies. So number 6 is Lucas Enrique, but we actually don't have his deck list on Limitless, so I've actually gone and grabbed Rahul, Sam Chen, Pedro, and Fabian's list that they all play the same 60 cards of, and I think this is, again, a very, very strong Pikarom build. All doing so well does just tell you that the counts are all pretty much spot on. The 4 Jirachi build complemented by 2 Rope, 2 Switch, 2 Board, and still has the Zero Aura backup for getting around Absol and being an attacker in its own right. And just, again, trying to get this Pikachu and Zekrom rolling as quickly as possible. I think it's very strong. Their supporter line isn't playing any Cynthia, which is strange. They are, again, playing Erica. I don't know. I'm less of a fan of Erica than other people are, but sure, it's not the worst card when you can dig it out with Stellar Wish and get a big hand size that grows rather than shuffles, which makes sense when you're trying to dig towards a combo of knockouts alongside Electro Powers and Choice Bands, because with a Cynthia, you would have to play the Electro Powers, then Cynthia, and they can end up being wasted, whereas Erica's, you can build your hand first, see what you draw into, and know whether or not to use your Electro Powers or not, for example. But overall, I think this is a very consistent, simple shell. I think Pikachu and Zekrom, again, it has to do some work if it wants to improve your Zoro matchups. I think, again, they're so Jirachi focused, they have no real plan B against a muck hitting the field. So I think that's where you need to change up the list and look towards playing, again, the Wobbuffet or Zebstrika, or even just changing up your build, being less reliant on Jirachi and going more like Jose down to an Acrobike build, or even playing Weakness Policy. There's all sorts of things Pikachu and Zekrom can do to improve its Zoroark. It's just how you try to that really makes sense. And this list also is fairly awkward in Zapdos mirror matches. You're hoping that you can try and trade on them with early pressure with Zapdos and hope that a late game GX can stick on the board for a turn or two. That's pretty much your only out. But that's pretty awkward. I think your matchup against Pikarom is definitely weak, especially if people are going to go to the Rainbow build, which in my opinion they should be. So the final list is an Elm build of Zoroark Lycanroc, which is very interesting from Henry Brandt. I hate Elm at the moment. I think we saw from Stefan's list the Lily Nest Ball is definitely the consistent way to go. But there are still big takeaways that I do like from Henry's build. Interestingly, he's playing the new Alolan Grimer. It has 10 less hit points, but Chemical Breath can knock out Jirachis if they're snoozing, which is quite funny. He is playing the Twilight Eyes Lycanroc GX. This can help you out in some Zoroark mirror matches at times. If you don't have a knockout response on a Lycanroc, you can Twilight Eyes and try and get a hit on it to make it difficult for them, especially if they're using Counter Gain, but that's not all that likely. Splintered Shards GX is similar to how Stefan tried to get around with Lucario. Here, there's a 1 energy answer to Pika Rom at times if they have enough energy in the discard pile, but it's a little bit awkward in my opinion. The Giratina is quite interesting for trying to jump over Sledgehammer turns, and that might be more relevant as we go through and see, the baby buzzers being introduced into all sorts of lists. I really hate the Timer Ball. Timer Ball should have just been more Pokecoms in my opinion. Erica's Hospitality doesn't make too much sense in Zoroark either, because you can't lower your hand size too much. Didn't make sense to me. But I do like that he's playing double Kukui still, double Devoured. There's some things that don't make sense to me. The Rainbow Energy is an interesting one as well. It means he can Acerola some stuff, maybe get extra use out of his Lycanroc GX, either one of them. It means he can get out of a low end muck as well if that's going to get trapped. So it does give some versatility. I don't mind the Rainbow Energy at all, but there's definitely some interesting counts here. I think the gold standard is Lily at the moment, but Henry did prove that Elm can still do quite well. My only anecdote really is that whenever he was on stream, I think he bricked 5 of his 6 or 7 games. So the Elm seemed to be very slow and awkward, and I would prefer to have a large hand size with a Lily anyway. I guess the counter argument is you may as well guarantee these because you'll get let loose a good amount of times anyway when you face Malamar players and some Pikarom players. So the counter argument is there for Elm to just say, hey, let's guarantee the basics. We're going to get let loose regardless. But I think in general, Lily plus a higher Pokecom count gives you a better chance of drawing more cards. And you still get a reliable amount of basics down early. So yeah, I think some counts were a little bit up in the air for this list. It's kind of like hybriding an old list, which you can't argue with so early into a new season. And there's still some familiarity with just playing an Elm Zoro build. So I guess that does play into the hands of the Zoroark player. But overall, I think take the plunge with the Lily build, man. I think it's just so much stronger. And then you just naturally suck up a lot of spaces, which is awkward. You don't have space for multi-switch and counter gain necessarily at all. You may not even have space for the Giratina. So the Elm list does give you more spaces, but if you're going to use those spaces for Time Balls anyway, just don't bother really. I would stick to the Lily build. So anyways, that is the top 8 lists. Obviously 8th place was this winning deck list that we saw here. Let me know what you guys think. What was your favorite of the top 8 deck lists? How are you going to improve them? How are you going to change them in the new format, as it does seem that there's going to be more Zoroark intensifying as Zapdos Jirachi has just pretty much come out of nowhere. Well, not really nowhere, but definitely overperformed in this event. And Pikachu and Zekrom seems to have lots of different directions. We had 3 different Pikaroms all in top 8. 2 of them are definitely very different. And we don't know Lucas Enrique's build just yet. But another successful build that we saw from Pedro Torres, Fabian Puyol, Sam Chen, and Rahul Reddy, they all played a very separate build from these 2 guys as well. So it's going to be interesting to see who thinks what in terms of what's the best and how they're all going to adapt. I've got lots of my own opinions. I'm going to be doing a top tier tweaks video tomorrow, I think, because I'm going to Cannes this weekend. It's a special event, and it's going to be very interesting how we see the knee-jerk reactions from this tournament pretty much. And I'll be going through my own builds of the top-tier decks and talk about how they've changed and such. So, yeah, that's it from me, guys. Hope you did enjoy this voyage down the top 8 of Internats. I had a blast commentating it, and now we move on to the next tournament. Bring on more team-up shenanigans, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.